you that not all my suspicion involves strange objects in the sky that we can't identify. But it also then involves things deep within the earth. My engineering background is responsible for this portion of my research, as I wondered for many years whether rumors about underground facilities were really true, and if they were, how were these facilities built, who built them, and for what purpose. Apparently, black project money is one of the largest expenditures our government has, and it appears, at least to me, that very little accountability is required on such projects. To obtain funding for black projects, such catchphrases as national security, research and development are used to obtain the funding, with very few questions asked, since there won't be any answers forthcoming anyway. Underground facilities have been constructed for years, not only by the United States, but also by many other countries. And many of those projects involved high-tech engineering to accomplish. Through different means of obtaining information, we know the Russians, the North Koreans, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, and many other countries have subterranean tunnel systems and bases located underground. The experience and technology required is commonplace today, and with the advent of new technology, underground facilities will be even more complex and more secretive in the future. I believe we know that the Pentagon owns at least one boring machine, got an Air Force emblem on it and a bunch of Air Force people standing around it. A workforce is readily available for doing underground projects with years of experience in mining for such things as diamonds, coal, salt, and many other common products. Equipment that's been developed over the years to the point that very large boring machines can now work below the Earth's surface with no knowledge above ground that anything is taking place. Several companies such as the Rand Corporation, Dawn Engineering, Bechtel, and others have been heavily involved in tunneling for years. So we have the knowledge and technology to tunnel and bore through mountains and deep within the earth for mining, constructing highways, railroads, drainage systems, etc. Why not also for secretive projects we taxpayers know very little about? I want to share some of the equipment being used today that we've been able to acquire. That's a flame jet. That one shoots flame into the surface where they're boring and melts the material. Some of these I'm showing you particularly so you can reference the size of the man standing with the equipment itself to get the idea how big these things are. That's a nuclear device. This one I'm proud of. I found this drawing. It's got a patent number up here of 1972. That was developed in Los Alamos at the National Lab in 1972. That machine can go through the earth and you never know it was there. Being nuclear, it melts the rock and dirt as it's boring a hole, pushes it into the wall it just made, makes a glass-like lining. Nothing has to come out of the ground, nothing goes in the ground. It could be right down here and you and I wouldn't know it's there. Pretty amazing. If that was done in '72, I don't know what they have today. That's some of the Robbins equipment. And that's one of the vertical. A lot of times they use old mine shafts because the hole's already there and they go down the mine shaft. And when they get down and start drilling, boring, when they get through, a lot of times they'll back the machine up and drill into the side of the hole they just made, leave the machine there. Rather than bring it back out of the ground, they say it's cheaper to just leave it where they're at. The channel over in, between France and England was done with these type machines, and you may have seen shows on television where they're starting to show some of the equipment. As I stated earlier, it's almost a necessity today to do secretive work underground because of the large number of satellites circling the Earth with the ability to take a photo that can read a newspaper from 200 miles above. It's basically the only way to keep secrets from the public or spying eyes of their adversaries. For our national defense, missile silos were placed 150 to 200 feet underground in the early 1960s. They had fuel, water, generators, living facilities, and supplies for a number of personnel for at least 30 days. The initial cost of constructing those facilities was around $14 million. And many were only used a few years before being deactivated. NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, is located in the Cheyenne Mountain near Colorado Springs, Colorado. It became fully operational in April 1966, replacing the above-ground facility at Ant Air Force Base. The initial cost was $142 million. Today, its annual budget exceeds that amount annually. NORAD's job is to monitor anything in space, which today includes over 13,000 objects in orbit around the Earth, larger than the size of a baseball. Since space tracking began in 1957, space objects have been cataloged, some of which have long since returned to the Earth's atmosphere and burned up. That's the control center at NORAD. The underground facility has almost 3 miles of tunnels, 3-foot thick blast doors, and is located 1,700 feet beneath the mountain. It employs over 1,000 military and civilian personnel and is also self-sustaining with its own power, water, air, and food for over 800 people for a 30-day period. Rumor has it that NORAD will again move, and security has been increased since 9/11. Our government also has facilities located near Washington, D.C. for the President of the United States, if needed in a national emergency, and separate facilities for the House of Representatives and Congress of the United States. Names of these facilities include Mount Weather, Virginia, the Greenbrier facility in West Virginia, and by the way, the Greenbrier facility is no longer operational, as it has been moved to another location because its secrecy was jeopardized in 1992, and that 112,000 square foot facility is now available for tours. CNN reported that on September 11, 2001, immediately after the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, Vice President Cheney and key personnel of Congress and staff members were taken to the Presidential Emergency Operations Center beneath the east wing of the White House. President Bush and the media personnel traveling with him aboard Air Force One made a stop at an underground facility at Offutt Air Force Base near Omaha, Nebraska, at a Strategic Air Command base before returning to Washington later that day. Many of these civilian facilities are controlled by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. As far back as 1975, a Senate subcommittee learned that Mount Weather computers could obtain millions of pieces of additional information on the personal lives of American citizens. That's you. Simply by tapping the data stored at any of the other 100 federal relocation centers controlled by FEMA. Mount Weather is also connected to Raven Rock, Pennsylvania, an underground Pentagon, 60 miles north of Washington, as well as nearly every U.S. military unit stationed around the world. Mount Weather was actually prepared for use during the 1961 Cuban Missile Crisis and the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963. It was also in standby status in 1967 and 68 during the urban riots. So in addition to FEMA being there to assist in national disasters or emergencies, they're also maintaining information on many of us private citizens. FEMA refuses to answer any questions about Mount Weather or its budget, so like Area 51 and many other locations, you and I are paying for something that according to our government doesn't exist, or we don't need to know about it. Having such facilities for our leaders is not limited to just our country either. As we know, the Russians have similar facilities for their leaders from Moscow. These examples I've given you are primarily for the defense of our country, or at least that's what we're told. What else goes on in these facilities, or worse, in many other underground facilities are not specifically designated for national defense. I continue to have a great interest in other alleged locations such as Dulce, New Mexico, Someone in the audience asked me about Dulce before we started. Where to this day, rumors are abundant that an underground facility exists with at least 7 levels below ground. And according to these rumors, biogenetic experiments have taken place there on animals and humans, and it's been reported that aliens are involved with our own personnel in performing those experiments. All we have to go on for verification, however, are very limited reports from people who have claimed to work there at one time, and the old story of credibility again raises its ugly head. There does seem to be a lot of secrecy around the Dulce area located on the Hickory Apache Indian Reservation in northern New Mexico. And other researchers I know have had problems when news of their interest in Dulce became public. It's believed that Dulce may be connected to Los Alamos by an underground tube shuttle. Navajo Dam, a government-sponsored project, is believed to be the main source of electrical power for the Dulce base. Perhaps the rumors about Dulce are nothing more than disinformation to direct attention away from a location where these things do exist. Another base still of interest to me, although mostly denied by many years, is the Montauk base on Long Island, New York, best known for the Philadelphia experiment, where a Navy warship, the USS Eldridge, disappeared during a Navy radar invisibility experiment and reappeared hundreds of miles away. Many also believe this base was used to perform mind control on unsuspecting individuals. Are these and other types of experiments really being done by our government? And is that one of the purposes of having underground facilities away from prying eyes? If the answer is yes, I strongly suggest we need to ask more questions. 2 books that I highly recommend on the subject of underground bases were written by Dr. Salters. The United States Navy has published articles and reports pertaining to the feasibility of having underwater facilities with no connection to the mainland for basic needs such as air, water, and being self-sufficient for large numbers of personnel for extended periods of time. Has our technology driven us underground? Not really, because the Hopi Indians of Arizona talk about their ancestors originating from within the earth and arriving through a tunnel at the base of San Francisco Peak near Flagstaff, Arizona. We're finding vast tunnel systems in Egypt on the Giza Plateau that may have been used as canals with water to transport items from one location to another. So concealing things underground is not something new.